I don't know if they were really ignorant, but they claimed ignorance. And so if we want to make it, if we want to make it in this next 4 years, we want to protect ourselves, then we cannot move forward by turning a blind eye. We have to make sure that we are fully aware of what's going on. And like I said, he's written what he's going to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So we just have to stay on top of that, and we have to continue to work. As I've been saying in the NAACP, we have work to do. The NAACP launched an initiative in the last 2 months, an initiative called Project Hope. And HOPE stands for Health, Opportunity, Political and Policy Engagement, and Education. So for the next few years, as long as I'm president, for the next few years when you've been president, hopefully I'll be president for a while, so we'll have some other initiatives. But for the next 2 years, we're going to be focusing on those things, right? For the advancement of people in our community, in particular people of color in our community. We want to make sure that we have a healthy community. Opportunity, we want to make sure that we have not only economic opportunity, right, but access all across the board. And as we see, they're already pulling back DEI. They're already trying to take us back. He didn't just pull back on DEI, but he pulled back, I think it was a 1965 act that Lyndon B. Johnson signed for Non-Discrimination Act. He's already pulled stuff back on that. I mean, these are civil rights, right? And so, access across the board. We want to make sure that here in Tacoma and Pierce County that we can maintain the access that we already have fought so hard for, that many of you have fought very hard for. We cannot, as Kamala Harris said, we're not going back, right? Political and policy engagement. This year, we have some major elections coming up here in Pierce County and especially here in the city of Tacoma. We have a mayor who is termed out. We have a city manager who is retiring. We have a police chief who has just now stepped down. We have city council seats that are up. School boards that are up, which is so important when you see these people trying to take away the Department of Education. We have so many seats that are up, and we have to be engaged. We can't just sit idly by and say, okay, well, I'm going to put my head in the sand and hope that the next 4 years is going to be okay.
Nope.
It's not. If we don't do anything, we just sit there, it will not be okay. So, we have to make sure that we get engaged, that we're getting out to vote, but that we're educating people, right? Getting young people. Oftentimes, my wife and I are the youngest people in a room. Even tonight, we are the youngest people in a room, right? How do we make sure that we're engaging the next generation of people to make sure that they're part of this discussion? Because a lot of you have done this work, right? But what happens when you get tired, right? What happens if there's no generation to come up behind you? And so we're focusing in NAACP. Part of our strategic plan is to engage the next generation. And then the last thing is education. Part of education is engaging the next generation. We've been working on scholarships and giving students of color access to college, right? And other avenues if they want to go. But education, access to college, because what I realize is that many a times students of color don't go to college, not because they don't want to, but either because they don't know or they don't have the money to do it. And so the NAACP, we're making a commitment as we're moving forward to try and create avenues to make sure that if a student wants to go to college, that money is not the reason they can't go. So we've already started conversations with that, and not just college, but
Trade
Vocational
schools? There you go.
That's my boss over there, so I just what she was saying. But vocational schools and things like that, right? So I digress because I can talk. I'm a preacher, and I have some other things that we're going to talk about at the end. But just to give you a little layout, when I'm done, we're going to read from my wife, Mrs. Melissa Redeemer, who is the Vice President of Legally Black, who we're partnering with this evening. And then we'll have Bruce Shalom, who is from the Institute for Community Leadership, who we're also partnering with. They actually, in partnership with the Martin Luther King Freedom Center, are the ones hosting the Robert Lee and Ellen Harris lecture, which is in Oakland right now. So they are live in Oakland. And we're going to we're going to basically watch that program, which is about an hour and a half. And we'll hear from Hakeem Jefferies, we'll hear from Congresswoman Barbara Lee, from Mayor Ellen Harris, who is mayor in Oakland, and a few others. But really, they're going to be talking about how we protect our democracy. And so we're going to listen to them, and then we're going to come back together just for a brief 20 to 30 minutes, just so that we can talk amongst ourselves and really kind of figure out what do we do, right? Now that we've heard these people get on the national stage, what do we do here locally, right? You've heard what I said. You've heard that the NAACP has adopted this initiative, Project Hope, but that's not going to be enough, and we can't do it alone. So that's just a little of the layout for today. Once again, thank you all for coming. This is just the beginning, and welcome.
Hi everybody, I'm a little bit more shy than my husband. And now I feel we'll talk after him and I'm going like I understand that to 100% at this moment. But good evening, my name is Mrs. Melissa Redeemer. And as stated, I am the Vice President for Legally Black, which stands for full.
Yeah, I'm going in.
Whatever the L stands for. So, altruistic, creative, and key. We are a nonprofit that started in Rhode Island, but really got rooted here in the city of Tacoma, that focuses on organizing grassroots efforts for collective community response. I would just like to thank you all for joining us tonight. My husband and I were having a conversation towards the end of last year, just kind of reflecting being a young couple, the upcoming next generation, and really thinking about what does it mean to have somebody who we know isn't for us, doesn't like us, don't want to see us win, hold an office, be able to not only hold the highest office in the land, but then have the backing of a Congress that looks like him, something we have, a face like him, something we haven't seen in a long time, and really just thinking about how egregious Project 2025 is. And despite the fact that to us and our community is absolutely heart-wrenching, there's people who support it 100%, who are willing to put their dollar behind it, who are willing to stand 10 toes for it. And the only response instead is to stand 10 toes down in opposition. After the election, people are starting to feel bold again. They want to count our community out. But I am a woman of faith. I know that collectively we will all be provided the things that we need to be the change that we want to see. We already have it within us. And so when they count us out, we have the power to make them count again. And that starts with coming together like we are tonight. And I think I'm passing it on to Mom. Get these from the community first.
Good evening. My name is Lam Hua. I'm from the Institute for Community Leadership. Before I get started, though, I'm supposed to represent the Institute today, but I see among us one of my, I guess, boss is also here. I want to introduce first Alejandro, who's on our board of directors. Alejandro had been a youth graduate and worked with the Institute and is on our board.
Nice to meet you, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight, and we're really grateful for all of you to come out and see what we can do about democracy and how we can protect democracy. And I really feel like what we do as a community reflects what's going to happen in the future and what's going on right now. So thank you all again for coming out, and I'll bring it back to Lauren.
Thank you. I just want to say a word on behalf of our executive director, Dr. Boyd Wilson. We'd love to be in California hosting the Congressman Jefferies and all of the other important people we have just heard about, like former Congresswoman Barbara Lee and her replacement in Congress, Congresswoman Latifah Simon and Lou Harris. This lecture is named after Barbara Lee and Lou Harris. This is, I believe, our 33rd lecture. We do about 3 times a year. This month, and this so happens that we, as Lalana has just mentioned, our context, we had a new government, a new leader in the country, and we were able to bring in somebody sort of on the other side of the aisle to the new government, who we've asked to share about what things we could do to promote and protect democracy, and what other practical things that we need to do in our lives locally to promote and protect democracy in our lives and in our nation. And the Institute for Community Leadership has been working to do this for 30 years now, and we continue to do so. Alejandro here, when he was a lot younger, was part of the Institute of Learning, and some of you here may hear of or see the Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Center, where a sister organization, the Institute for Community Leadership, is here in Washington. The Freedom Center is in Oakland, California. We have one executive director for both. As we think about and hear what's going to be said and reflect on our world today, at the end, when we discuss with each other, I would invite all of you to keep in mind not only what can we do, but also what can the next generation of young leaders do. That's why, towards the end, I brought along this little flyer pamphlet, one of our core programs. It's a human and civil rights seminar series, a discussion series for young people 14 to 24, where they talk with a Stanford professor who's retired now and teaches our youth on the history of the civil rights movement, the history of human rights movement, and how it still affects us today. It's a wonderful opportunity. You have kids, you have grandkids, you have nephews, nieces and nephews around the age of 14 to 24 who's interested in learning what others have gone through so that they can also get knowledge from that experience. I will be sharing this towards the end. So we hope you enjoyed this lecture, and we hope you will be able to watch other lectures as we produce them later on in the year. Thank you.
One more thing, I just wanted to say this because I think it's pretty interesting. As an alumni, I also want to recognize Milano. He's an alumni as well. And if you have any questions of our organization and any work that we have done, Milano has been there as well. So thanks again for the NAACP and for Milano for making this happen. We really appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you. I do want to just take time. We have about 11 minutes before it actually goes live. But I want to take time to introduce some of our NAACP leadership who is in the room. And so, as I said, my name is Melinda Redeemer. I'm the secretary serving as president. We have our second vice president, Ms. Margaret Gilbert. Wave your hand. You may not have recognized her today. I didn't recognize her today. She's been switching it up on me. And then we have our secretary, our assistant secretary, Ms. Jacqueline Harris. And our first vice president, who is not here today, is Mr. Lyle Clausen. Our third vice president is Ms. Noemi Caden Porter. And then our secretary, who is also not here tonight, is Ms. Ronalda Solitaire. And so we have an amazing team of people. We also have an incredible executive committee. And so our executive committee, we have Ms. Yana Cook, who is here, who is our executive committee. Of course, my wife, who you've already seen, who is on our executive committee, who leads our youth council. Jonathan Johnson, our immediate past president, who is on our executive council. Mr. George Gilbert is not on the executive council, but he is, but he got us all elected, so I'll make sure I didn't miss anybody who is not, okay, great. So, I will say, one of the call to actions that we're gonna talk about at the end of tonight is join the NAACP. So, if you are not a member of the Tacoma branch NAACP, it costs $30 a year. If you need assistance with that, we can offer assistance for that. And you just go online to naacp.org/join. You type in your address and our NAACP will pop up. Make sure you click Tacoma NAACP. It's pretty simple, but like I said, we have to, if we're gonna get past this, we have to do it together, right? And so the NAACP, we are excited to get to work in the next 2 years, the next 4 years, the next 6 years, the next 20 years. We're excited to get to work, but we need, if it's okay, we don't have very many people under a certain age. I didn't want to say the age because then I thought about it. It might age some people in the room, but we don't have very many people under a certain age, right? And I'm gonna say this, it's okay. It's okay. You can still join, but also bring your grandkids, bring your children, bring your nephews, bring your nieces, bring them along in this. When we talk about the work of the Institute and the Freedom Center, as you look up here, you might see some familiar faces. You might see faces like John Lewis, right? And one of the things about John Lewis is that John Lewis was a part of something called SNCC. And SNCC was, you had the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which Dr. King, and crazy because he was like 25 when he started, but the elders were a part of. And then you had SNCC, where you had these young people. And oftentimes they butted heads, but the civil rights movement was successful because you had both of them. And the way that you saw John Lewis was because he got called in the room with Dr. King. And you had the elders and the young people coming together, putting their heads together for success. And just to tell you a little story about Tacoma. Tacoma is not like any other, it's like every other city. When we start getting together, they try to divide us. You know, we can have as many black people as we want on city council. But when we come together, they try to divide us. In 2020, George Floyd had been murdered. Betty Ellis was murdered here locally. And we saw protests come up here throughout Tacoma. And we saw young people going out every single weekend protesting. That's how my wife and I got together. She came to an NAACP function, and then she followed me to every protest. She followed me to Washington, D.C. And then we came back, and I was like, well, I guess it's your house. But young people were protesting every weekend. And But the young people weren't talking to the elders. And the elders were doing their work. They were meeting with councilmen, meeting with the city manager, and meeting with the mayor, and doing what they did. But they weren't talking to each other. So that's what happened. The city called the elders and said, hey, your young people are out there marching. Tell them to stop. Now, if you were in Tacoma, you know that all the protests were very peaceful. We didn't tear up anything. Can't say that about other cities, but here in Tacoma, nothing was torn up. But they still didn't like it. It was disturbing their peace. It was making them uncomfortable, which is what we're called to do. Right? So they called the elders. And the elders pulled us in and said, stop marching. We said, no. They said, this is not right. You're making people feel uncomfortable.
Exactly.
So fast forward, it took 4 years for the verdict of Manny Ellis to come, or the verdict of the officers who killed Manny Ellis to come out. So me, I have the privilege of being able to be one of the young people who have been at both tables. So I said, this time we're gonna bridge the gap. So I said, okay, as soon as the verdict came out, I called all the elders, called all the young people. I said, we're gonna come together so that you know what they're doing and you know what they're doing. And interesting enough, once we started talking to one another,
It made sense.
they were in agreement with one another.
Imagine
Once we started talking to one another, now the elders are like, yeah, we'll show up to the march. We'll show up to the protest. Matter of fact, we'll be a part of it. We're not going to come stop you. We're going to be a part of it. Now the elders are saying, yeah, let's take action. Let's show up to city council and make sure that we are pack it out. Intergenerational.
strength in numbers.
Intergenerational organizing. That's what the NAACP is about to be about. Intergenerational organizing. So, that was pretty good, huh? So we have 3 minutes. Please just talk amongst yourself. Once it goes live, please be quiet. Don't talk amongst yourself. Any questions?
Turn off your phones.
Yes, sir.
The ringer.
Yes, sir.
I have a quick thing, comment, question. I know the 28th is supposed to be, the day that we're supposed to boycott Target and everywhere else. But I'm a business owner here in the state of Washington. My concern is more, you know, blacks talk the talk, we don't walk.
Hmm?
You know, I'm a place, I'm gonna just say this, I'm gonna throw me in. I'm a place called Jazz's Cafe. Half of y'all have never even heard of it. That a black in the room is what I'm talking about. And how many have been in it? You know, we're open every day, from 11 to 2. 90% of the people that walk in there look like this. We do jazz every Sunday.
Jazz Cafe. I can't remember the exact name, but it's on that. It's a bar and a cafe.
Tacoma, Minnesota. I run janitorial supply store. Not one black church buys from me. We talk that talk about what are we gonna do about Trump? What are we gonna do about this? What are we gonna do about each other?
All right.
How are we gonna help each other move out of this? Why should we boycott Target when we already boycotting our own black business?
Right. Now, now.
Yeah, I am upset about it. I'm upset about it because I worked hard. 28 years in the military, 25 years in business. I did everything that I need to do. And I still have to go beg my people to come eat the food that I prepared. Because half of them who don't know me, because it's him, he think he's got this, and he think he's got that. So let's start in Tacoma first by, don't support, let's start supporting black people. When we support black people in Tacoma, we don't even work out.
Right.
Thank you.
Really good, really good.
You don't know, but you just like launched us into the conversation we're gonna have after this. But, you know, there was discussion, oh, they changed the time. There was a discussion somebody called me and said, what's the NAACP doing? Are we gonna boycott these stores? I said, I thought about it, but I had a similar sense as you. I said, but how about we just support our local stores and our local businesses? Because, quite frankly, don't go to Target, don't go to Walmart, you know. But
Boycott Amazon.
Amazon most definitely.
boycott Amazon.
Amazon most def.
But I don't know, it's just my thoughts. I don't know how our impact here, us not going to Target here, right?
It makes a
It
statement.
makes a difference because they've already lost $55 billion, $15 billion across the nation for people not going.
Because it's hard.
Because they retracted CEI, right? But also, let's focus on how we can invest in our local businesses, our local restaurants, people who we know are in favor of us. And so, I'm not gonna talk too much about that tomorrow, I'm gonna talk about it later. But I will say, keep an eye open because what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be bringing a list of Black-owned businesses, businesses that we know support us, local businesses, to give people alternatives to shopping at your Target, shopping at your Walmart, shopping at whatever the store is that's not in favor of us. Because yeah, let's go eat, was it Jazzy's?
Jazzy's Cafe Tacoma.
Where's it at?
Where the Goodwill is on 38th Street.
Yeah.
Turn right, come down 2 blocks on the right.
Find that Union Hall place.
3701 South Lawrence Street, Tacoma, Washington.
Oh, there?
On the side of Ross?
Go across the street from Riyad's Garage.
Okay.
It's north of there.
Directly across the street from Riyad's Garage.
Apparently my wife and I went there this summer. So next time.
Two out of 30. That's a great average.
Yes, ma'am.
No, I'm just saying, I've been there.
That's good, now half a year ago.
I have a question.
Good job.
So, I'm all for supporting our local businesses, but how many of the local community businesses are owned by African Americans?
So we actually have quite a few Black-owned businesses here in Tacoma.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we'll be working on is providing a list, and there's actually lists out there. If you go to the Tacoma Urban League,
Right.
they have a list of Black-owned businesses.
The Black Collective also has.
The Black Collective, Generation 2.0, New Generation 2.0 has a list as well. But we're gonna kind of push those lists out.
That's what I was gonna say. Hi, Miranda, my name is Christopher. I was gonna ask if you two spoke on Angela Davis, because her business is Doing It, Does It. And so they've put together a list already. I was just
Okay.
talking to her yesterday about that.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. I know, I wanted to say something at the end.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry about
Sure,
the
okay.
time. They're a little behind because they're still letting people in because of security, because of who's there.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries. No
Let me get
worries.
some questions and then
No
we'll
rush.
come to you. Yes, sir, Mr. John.
Related to the conversation about some groups knowing who you are and some not. I see this place like a 16-lane freeway. All of us are driving our lanes, doing what we need to do to survive in our family. And because I don't go into the left lane, doesn't necessarily mean I hate people over there. I don't know. And we need to find ways to increase knowledge and increase the habit of supporting one another. That's gonna take time. You can't do it one time, go to the restaurant one time, we've gotta create the habit. That takes time, we can do that, and I'm very glad that we're here supporting the new president. I'm very glad that we're gonna bring in that next generation, because when the baton gets passed, we're gonna need a lot of folks to support them. And I'm very glad that we're doing that right now. So thank you all for being here. Give yourselves a hand.
I will say just to what Lom said, so I used to help organize these lectures. And it's just crazy to think of the time that we're in. These lectures are packed. They're packed. Hundreds of people, maybe up to maybe 1,000 people in these lectures. And we've never had to have security to this extent, but this is where America is. That to have, we have high people come to these things. Like, it's not just Joe Schmo off the street. Like, we have some pretty, and you have to have security. I mean, that just, anyways, they increased the time again, so I'm gonna invite you, because you are running for city council.
Yep.
So I want you to just come up and
Okay.
just talk with us, just introduce yourself so people can know who you are.
Appreciate it.
We're kind of killing time because they're just not starting,
Well,
so.
I'll help you fill time.
You had a comment back here, I think.
What's that?
I told him, I think she had a comment, a hand raised.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, Ms. Fine.
No, that's okay. Why do I interrupt?
We got time, we'll come back. So come on, Kristen.
Okay. Well, I didn't have anything prepared. I wasn't planning on coming up here and speaking, but thanks for having me. My name is Krista Perez. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I'm running for position 6. I'm an at-large position with Kiara Daniel support. And, you know, lots of others are supporting me as well. I can share my website with you if you'd like to see who's supporting me. But I really just wanted to say hi and thank you for having me here. I know that there's like a few ways I think I've been kind of involved from afar. I'm not sure, maybe you can tell me how the CRP has kind of impacted any of the NAACP members. Have you received any funding from the CRP? Okay. Because I know the NAACP helped facilitate our community sessions for information on the community reinvestment plan. So I'm the contract manager and I'm overseeing $50 million in the workforce development grants and the economic development grants, as well as $15 million in the local advisory teams, which are local teams that have been formed through community foundations here. It's Greater Tacoma Community Foundation that has helped formulate that team. And so they're teams that are led by buy-and-fors, what we call buy-and-fors, which are folks that are either Black, Latine, or tribal. I believe here in Tacoma, it's primarily Black folks that are leading the LA team. And they inform and direct the $2 million that was granted and awarded to GTCF to go out into the communities to organizations that are also led by and serve Black, Latine, and tribal folks. So yeah, I wanted to share that, you know, look out for those businesses. And I'm also here to support and connect. I've done a lot of work with small businesses in Tacoma. With the Urban League, with the city of Tacoma, with the county, and focusing primarily on Black and brown businesses. So I'd be happy to help also with the list. I have a list of my own, and I also have connections with other people that have put together a list. So I really believe in co-creation and collaboration and partnership. So however I can partner and collaborate, I'm happy to do so. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Can you repeat your name and what position you're in?
Sure. Krista Perez. And then position 6.
Where is that district?
So it's an at-large position, so it represents all of Tacoma. So it's
So
not.
if you're
a
in Tacoma,
district- Huh?
you're
What's
on,
that?
or if you're in Tacoma,
If-
you're on their ballot.
Yes, exactly.
Who's currently in position 6?
So Kiara Daniel,
Okay.
she's currently in position 6. She's the one I said, she essentially asked me to run for her seat. I'm not gonna speak for her, you know, some folks are like, why isn't she ready? I said, talk to Kiara. But, so yeah, so she's deputy mayor right now. I don't know if you've noticed that, but yeah. And, I also live here in Tacoma, raising my children here. I'm also personally invested, right? So my children are half Black, so they're half Mexican, half Black. And we live on the east side. I'm a homeowner. A little bit about me.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about how to protect ourselves,
Sure.
right, for Prop 2025 and Agenda 47 and what we can do here locally. Someone who's running for office, like what's your advice? I mean, you get to the council.
Right.
How are you going to ensure that the things that we fought for here in Tacoma stay? Yeah.
Right. So, you know, my philosophy has always been, and what I've done and demonstrated, I also started the Tacoma Women Color Collective five, maybe 6 years ago now, is walking alongside community, right? And so I'm not gonna claim to have all of the answers. I would love to come together and have difficult conversations. I also really believe in intergenerational work. And engaging the elders and the youth, and what is it that we agree on that we'd like to push forward together so that we're not divided. And those are things I'm not afraid to advocate for, right? And to have difficult conversations for. If we can come into unity about the things that we desire, I'm not afraid to advocate and have those difficult conversations. And so, of course, I can't promise anything, but I can promise and commit to having the difficult conversations and advocating for what we agree on. And also within the systems and structures that we're living in, right? So that's a reality as well, is, you know, I have experience, right, in implementation within systems, because that's systems work, and it's difficult, right? We may desire one thing, but it may take us a little while. We need to have the vision to be able to get through that process to make that change, and it might take us a little bit of time, but it's important to stay dedicated and committed to that. And so that is something I can say that I am and will do, is be dedicated and committed to that.
Any questions?
Are you from Tacoma, and what strategy would you have to put in place for minority businesses to stay in business?
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, first one, I wasn't born here. I was born in Oregon, and then we moved to Mexico as a child. But I've lived in several places. I decided to call Tacoma home almost 9 years ago. And my children's father is born and raised here, so they've been here for, I think, over 70 years. They came from Mississippi. So that's how I got here. I decided to call to come home. And then your second question, can you refresh me really quickly?
What strategies would you put in place to help minority businesses stay in business?
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Off the top of my head, you know, we're fighting statistics that are difficult, right? Small businesses typically fail within the first 3 to 5 years. That's tough. That's a statistic that we all face, right? I think part of it is something that we already talked about here, which is collaboration and making the habit of supporting one another. I mean, that's something that I think is overlooked, right? We go for convenience, we go for ease. We need to choose that sort of like revolutionary step, which is choosing us every time, right? Again and again. And then I think on a larger scale, it's, you know, I'm, like I said, all about collaboration, but how do we do this at a systems level is, you know, looking at the county, the city, and then what we're doing here in community, and how do we create that support at all 3 levels, right? So I would love to have all of those stakeholders or all of those perspectives at the table to kind of say, okay, this is what the strategy is going to be, right? Because we can all be making, kind of setting our strategy or plan up in different, kind of in silos separately without really looking at one another and collaborating. And sometimes we're reinventing the wheel and doing the same thing in 2 different areas, and it doesn't make sense, right? When we could be doing that together and say, okay, you're doing this really well, let me do this. Does that make sense? So I think it takes collaboration, partnership, and then doing it together and having a conversation. Good question.
Go ahead, yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to also introduce myself. Hi, Krista. I am also running for Tacoma City Council position 6, and so my name is Latasha Palmer. I'm born and raised here in Tacoma. Definitely am very much so involved in more, I would say, like grassroots efforts in that, in order to get community together and empower community to help ourselves and not be more dependent on some of these systems that are crumbling right before our eyes. So yeah, just wanted to introduce myself.
All right,
Thank you for that.
Tell us about any commissions that you've served on or things like that.
Yeah, so my most recent commission was the Charter Review Commission for Tacoma, and so we did a lot of work of trying to put forward 24 recommendations from everything from a police accountability committee to ranked choice voting, so election reform. The city council chose not to put most of these things forward, and so that was kind of a catalyst for me running, that, you know, there's a lot of things that community are asking for that our current city council is not responding to, so that is why I'm running.
Can I ask her the same question? What is your platform and what are you gonna strive on? The same question the lady asked.
Yeah. So my main focus again is community and grassroots, and so it's empowering us to empower each other. And I believe that there's room for innovation in kind of the systems that we're looking at, where there's economic mobility when it comes to different systems like cooperatives. I don't know if you're all familiar with cooperative businesses, or community land trusts for housing. Looking at these newer, not necessarily newer, but less conventional models in order to solve problems. And a lot of these things actually started in the Black community, and a lot of folks don't know the history there. And so kind of getting back to that and supporting those type of businesses and those type of relationships, so that, again, we're not dependent on these systems.
Let me just say thank you for this impromptu
Did
candidate forum. This candidate forum. So I love community because we can just, you know, we can do things like that. So let me ask you the same question, right? Because we're here and we have time.
Might as well.
Yeah. So, it will. It's gonna happen. So, as we're talking about, right, how we protect ourselves, how are you going to ensure on the council? Let me form this question a little bit different. If we get a more conservative mayor, a more conservative city manager, right? How are you, as a city council person, going to make sure that you stay true to the values in which you said that you're running for?
So I'd say on the current city council, there's kind of a mentality where you vote together. You don't necessarily go against what the other person is pushing. And so I think that that's not necessarily how you handle democracy. I think that you're able to have a respectful relationship with folks, but be able to hold your values and debate. And I think that should be done publicly. I think it should be transparent so that people can be held accountable for the positions that they're taking. And so no matter who is the city manager, no matter who's the mayor, that's basically what I'm going to continue to do. But then also I have pushed for a change in this form of city government, where we don't have one person behind the scenes, a city manager who's not accountable, who's not elected. And so I would also continue to push for that change as well.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Any other questions for either one of these folks? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I said, can they both run for president?
Thank you.
As you see, we have, there's some tough competition here, but it sounds like either one who wins will have a good person on the city council. So, but like I said, thank you for the impromptu candidate forum. I will say, be prepared, because the NAACP has also made a commitment this year to holding some official candidate forums. So be prepared to receive a phone call from us to do so. Oh, okay. We have another candidate in the room.
Do you want to continue the
So,
theme?
yeah, we have another candidate.
I just want to say back there.
Whitney, you waved at me, so come on up. And Whitney is running for mayor, but I'll let her.
Mayor.
As you can see, I came in my casual clothes tonight. I was planning to sit in the back of the room and learn. I'm not here to promote myself, which is also why I wasn't going to say anything. But since we have 10 minutes and we have a theme, my name is Whitney Stevens, and I am running for mayor. I'm the only woman currently running, and as Yolanda indicated, the question of do we end up with a slightly more conservative mayor than we currently have is certainly on the table. I would not be that person. I've been in Tacoma for about 20 years now. I came here to go to UW. I'm first generation, but first generation in my family to actually finish college and go to college. I'm a Pacific Northwest girl. I grew up in Enumclaw and ended up here, and I never left. I loved it. So I've been here since. I have 2 small children, and I am raising my children here in Tacoma schools with my husband, who ended up here also going to school. So we love Tacoma. We stayed. We've invested. I've spent my adult life working in and around government and elections. So I started by writing about city council and city government, trying to make it more understandable and relatable to people so that you could sort of drop that curtain a little bit and understand how city business works. I moved into working in constituent relations at Pierce County Council. I've worked in elections as an administrator, so for the auditor's office. So I've worked in those issues. And I don't want to interrupt. And I've worked also on campaigns. I worked on campaigns running from school board to statewide. And so I've never ever in all of the time wanted to actually be the candidate until the last year.
Good evening, everyone.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
we'll discuss after if it's.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Kim Thompson, and I am a member of the board of directors of the Martin.